Forbidden and rare bending techniques. The most popular Avatar: The Last Airbender topic here on YouTube. 1.3 million views on my last video covering this topic, but according to you guys, I missed a few. Okay, maybe more than a few. So don't worry, we are now running it back, but this time we are going to do it right. We are going to be collecting and including all of the updated and latest Avatar lore from the expanded universe. That includes the comics, the novels, the chapter books, maybe even the chibi series. We'll be taking all of that information to explain and rank every single forbidden, lost, and even rare bending technique. I will be assigning a rank to each of these techniques, F being the worst and S being the best. I can already tell this is gonna be the most chaotic video I've ever made, but let's do it. Let's go ahead and start things off with a banger. I'll go ahead and call this one vacuum bending. No, not that sort of vacuum. I mean a scientific vacuum. We're starting with one of the darkest airbending abilities ever created, removing all of the oxygen from a room. In Avatar Yangchan's first novel, The Dawn of Yangchan, she discovers that she can pull all of the air out of an enclosed space. And when she does this, everyone inside of it immediately begins to suffocate. No dramatic stance, no wind up, just silence, stillness, and then panic. Even Yangchan herself was horrified by this technique, and she only used it while completely alone because she didn't want anyone else to learn how to do it. And for a good reason. Could you imagine if this guy got a hold of that technique? People love to speculate that Monk Gyatso used this same technique. If you guys remember in episode 3 of Avatar: The Last Airbender, when Aang visits the Southern Air Temple and comes across Gyatso's skeleton, he was surrounded by a ton of different dead Fire Nation soldiers. The going theory is that Gyatso used this technique as sort of a last stand to take as many Fire Nation soldiers with him as possible. Now that's not confirmed or anything, but it does seem plausible. Obviously, I'm going to be ranking this technique S tier. There's no counterplay to it. It's invisible. It works in an instant and works on everyone. I know some people like to think other airbenders can counter this, but do you guys think an airbender could bend air in a vacuum? No, there's no air left to bend. There's no countering this. And if you thought that was the worst thing airbending can do, oh no, Yangchan takes this even further, like way further. This next technique is pretty similar, but it's small and condensed, so I'll be calling it micro vacuum bending. Now this technique is so good that I'm going to be breaking the list rules already. I'm going to be making an additional tier just for this technique. It's going in S+ tier because it's genuinely just so broken. Alright, let me explain. During Yangchan's fight with the Combustion Bender, Yangchan creates a small, tiny, localized pocket of vacuum. The wiki refers to this as an airless void. Essentially, she uses this small vacuum to stop combustion bending. When the vacuum collapses, the air rushes back in and the turbulence hits with so much force that it ruptures a man's lungs and eardrums instantly. Keep in mind, she wasn't even trying to kill him, he simply got caught in the shockwave. Could you imagine if she actually used this technique maliciously? This attack has zero windup, zero warning, zero travel time, even lightning bending needs time to charge, combustion bending has a delay, air blades are visible, fireballs are visible. This kills you before you even registered she moved. It's easily the most broken kill move in the Avatar universe, and that's why I'm putting it in S+ tier. Bloodbending is Avatar's original nightmare feel. It was discovered by Hama and used to escape a Fire Nation prison. First practiced on rats, then later advanced to puppeteer Fire Nation guards. Hama would trick Katara into learning this ability, who would later deem this ability to be so immoral that she outlawed it in Republic City. However, a man named Yukon would learn about this technique and take it a step further. He would gain the ability to use bloodbending without even moving. Although Yukon would be defeated by Avatar Aang, he would go on to teach both of his sons bloodbending, and one of them, Amon, would use it to take away other people's bending. So not only is this move the only move that can only be stopped by either a more powerful bloodbender or the Avatar state, but it can also be advanced to the point to where you can use it to take away people's bending. At its peak, bloodbending is S+ tier. At its worst, it's A tier. So that means it's a perfect S tier ability. Speaking of crazy waterbending abilities, Kyoshi pulls off something so insane, people still debate whether it counts as bloodbending. Kyoshi is known for one thing. She does what needs to be done. In the shadow of Kyoshi, during her confrontation with Yoon, Kyoshi lowers his guard, and gently places her hand over his chest and uses a hyper advanced healing technique to rapidly drop his internal body temperature, freezing his heart and lungs instantly. Now, I know it's an instant kill technique, it's scary, but we gotta remember, this is a world where every single fight takes place at range. Unless you're Netflix Avatar, then fuck bending, we throw in hands. But no, in all seriousness, in a world where every fight is a ranged fight of the elements, needing to get this close to someone isn't always practical. I know a lot of people probably expected this technique to be a little bit higher, but there's a reason it's only been done once. It's incredibly hard to pull off. Alright, let's take a break from all the serious techniques and let's talk about something fun. Fire fishing. Yes, fire fishing. This is our newest entry in the rare bending techniques category. Though it's not a combat technique, it is extremely useful, and the one proper user of it that we've seen does create an impressive amount of fire. Fire fishing was first shown in Avatar Legends Bending Academy, a chapter book set during the Avatar Sito era. Fire fishing is pretty much exactly what the name suggests. They create a large ball of fire and it attracts fish to jump out of the water into their boats. You guys remember during season 2 when Zuko and Iroh were extremely hungry? They could have used this, man. If they knew this existed, this would have helped them a lot. But anyways, I think I'm just gonna have to put it D tier. I guess if you're really hungry and you have no way of getting food, it would be S tier. But yeah, no, it's D tier, man. Okay, let's move on to some actual powerful firebending techniques. Now, I'm gonna need to explain some backstory to you guys because I already know what the entire comment section is going to look like. People are gonna be like, lightning bending isn't rare, blue fire isn't forbidden, fire jets aren't a lost technique, we've seen all of these things, and listen, yeah, on the surface, that looks to be true, but according to lore from the Reckoning of Roku, all of these advanced firebending techniques were once lost to time, and they weren't being taught. And I'm not talking about lost to time like 1,000 years ago or anything like that. I mean, they were just brought back in Avatar The Last Airbender. Let me explain. At just 16 years old, Prince Sozin secretly visited Wan Shi Tong's library, the greatest archive of knowledge in the Avatar world, and he uncovered ancient firebending records that had been buried for generations. What makes this even crazier is that Sozin's own father, Firelord Teso, completely dismissed the idea of old powerful firebending techniques existing at all and rejected Sozin's request to find them. The fact that we even see lightning bending, blue fire, fire jets, combustion bending, all of that stuff in Avatar The Last Airbender is almost certainly because Sozin brought them back. Like if the Fire Lord before Sozin thought that these didn't exist and then now all of a sudden we're seeing them in ATLA, which is only 2 Fire Lords after Sozin, I mean, it's pretty obvious, right? Alright, now that you know the backstory behind all of this, let's break down each of the firebending disciplines that Sozin uncovered. And don't worry, if you read the text earlier, you'll know that there's some in here that weren't shown in the series. Blue fire is easily the most famous one on this list. It represents extreme heat and extreme control. This isn't just fire that's hotter, it's fire that's been compressed and refined through insane precision. Only a handful of characters have ever been shown to have the ability to bend blue fire. Azula, the only character whose base flames have been permanently exchanged to blue fire, which is an achievement in its own. Roku and Sozin also briefly bent blue fire. However, this was in a spirit amplified cave. Zuko actually bent iridescent flames, which is a step above blue fire, but he's only done this once and has never done it again. I guess he could hypothetically bend blue fire, but he still hasn't done it. Roku himself has openly said that blue fire is much harder to control and more dangerous to the user, far less forgiving than regular fire. Now, the topic of colored fire is going to be coming up again in the future of this video, so I wanted to go ahead and clarify weakest to strongest fire. In the Avatar universe, I'm not talking about in real life, I'm talking in the Avatar universe. It goes, the weakest is orange, and then white, and then blue, and then iridescent. With all of that being said, I am going to be putting blue fire in B tier. Yes, I know, it's a lot hotter than regular fire. It's so rare, it's scary to look at, but time and time again in canon, regular fire has redirected, it's blocked it, and clashed evenly with it so many different times. It's undeniably a solid upgrade to your base fire, but it's not a game changer, unfortunately. I mean, it should be a game changer, but it's just not. So that is why I am putting it in B tier. Lightning bending is another one of those techniques that Sozin discovered in Wan Shi Tong's library, and it is very iconic. neck. It said you need mental clarity in order to use this technique, which is why Zuko couldn't learn how to do it. Unless you're Azula, then you don't need mental clarity. You can just do it whenever you want. Although lightning bending was this grand thing in Avatar: The Last Airbender, in The Legend of Korra, firebending is kind of like getting your forklift certification. It's still really strong and even became faster in The Legend of Korra, but it's not as terrifying as it once was. Because it's not as rare anymore, I want to put it in like B or C, but no, it's still crazy. You can still kill people with it almost instantly. I'd say it still deserves A tier. This one is terrifying in a subtle way. Sozin's research reveals that some firebenders can superheat the surrounding air and raise temperatures at a distance. This one doesn't really have a name for it, so I'm just gonna call it thermal bending, and we don't really know the limitations of this. It seems like theoretically it could be very strong, but also it seems like it could be kind of weak. I'm gonna put this one in A tier. Dragon's Breath, or Breathing Fire as Sozin put it, is an ancient firebending technique that can only be taught by the dragons. In season 3, we see Rand and Shaw teach Zuko and Aang this technique. This is a form of firebending that isn't fueled by rage or destruction. It's not entirely clear how it works. Zuko and Aang both say it feels like the sun but inside of them. Much like Blue Fire, this is just an amplification or even replacement of your original firebending. I'm gonna be putting Dragon's Breath in B tier, but B tier as in a little bit behind Blue Fire. Fire jets. Yes, flight via firebending. The thing, once again, pretty much only done by Azula and I guess Ozai, is a lost form of firebending that Sozin learned about in the Hidden Library. By channeling firebending through the feet or hands, or even both, firebenders can launch themselves vertically and fly. We've seen Ozai do this, Azula do this, and even Yangchan do this. You're literally flying. I mean, come on guys, how could I not put this in A tier? Now, this next one is extremely niche, but also one of the most hype firebending moments in the Avatar universe. In the shadow of Kyoshi, in a fight against a spirit-amped Yoon, Rangi, one of the most disciplined firebenders we've ever seen, gets pushed past her limits. She's injured, exhausted, and for the first time, she stops holding back. Her firebending becomes so hot, it goes from orange to white. Now, although this is really cool and such a hype moment, it just isn't as strong as Blue Fire. I'm really not even sure if it's as strong as Dragon's Breath, so I'm gonna be putting this one in C tier. Now, I know what I said, it goes orange, white, blue, iridescent, but I just think Dragon's Breath is a more consistent amplification than White Fire. White Fire may be stronger at its peak, but Dragon's Breath is something that is consistent and replaces your base flames, which is why I'm putting White Fire a tier below it. But let me know what you guys think. Should they be the same level? Should it be above it? I really am curious to know. Alright, it's getting a little bit too hot in here. I can see the comments. Let's take a little bit of a break from all the fire talk, and don't worry, we'll get back to it. There's a couple more on this list, but for now, let's move on to some other noise. Literally, sound bending has only ever been performed once in all of Avatar history, and it was done by the air nomad Avatar before Aang, Avatar Yangchan. And what makes this technique so terrifying isn't just how powerful it is, it's the fact that it wasn't used in some epic final battle. This was just used out of a fit of rage and frustration. After failing a critical mission in the dawn of Yangchan, Yangchan retreats alone to a secluded beach. She's overwhelmed, angry, exhausted, and carrying the weight of the world on her shoulders. In frustration, she lets out a scream. But this isn't just a normal scream. As she yells, Yangchan instinctively bends the air inside of her own lungs to amplify the sound. The result is not just loud, it's catastrophic. Her scream comes out with such force that it literally carves channels through the ocean. When her companion Kavik rushes towards her in concern, he doesn't even make it close. Despite covering his ears and bracing himself, he's still instantly deafened from just being in the vicinity of the sound waves. Again, this isn't a direct hit, this is just him being near it. That alone should tell you the absurd level of power at play here. Sound bending, vacuum bending, micro vacuum bending. If Yangchan really wanted to, she could have easily became the strongest avatar in history. Anyway, being able to instantly rupture someone's eardrums in battle is insane. If you really wanted to, you could put this in S tier and really gas it up. Like you could say if they ruptured someone's eardrums in battle, they wouldn't be able to stand, they couldn't balance on their feet. It's almost like an instant win ability. But I'm not gonna do that. I'm not gonna try to exaggerate it too much, so I'm going to be putting it in A tier. Speaking of the strongest avatar, let's take a step back and talk about some more of Kyoshi's techniques. In the shadow of Kyoshi, Kyoshi's throat was punctured by hundreds of tiny glass shards. Shockingly, Kyoshi was actually able to use earthbending to remove all of the the glass from her neck. If you didn't know this, glass is created from sand and therefore a part of Earth. Now, when I first thought of this, I was like, man, this is insane. Imagine hundreds of tiny glass shards coming at you from an earthbender. Like, that sounds insane, right? But if you think about it, it's not functionally different than hundreds of tiny sharp rocks getting thrown at you. It's pretty much the exact same. It pains me to say this because of how cool the potential is, but glass bending is kind of D tier. Earthbending is already extremely powerful, considering they have home court advantage pretty much everywhere. But one of the darkest uses of the ability is to bury somebody alive. We have seen this ability used in two different forms of Avatar media. We've seen it in the Rise of Kyoshi, but we've also seen it in Avatar The Last Airbender Season 2 Episode 1. In the Rise of Kyoshi, Zhanzhu used this ability as a mass killing method, forcing thousands of people into graves and then sealing them shut. After this, people would then begin to refer to him as Zhanzhu the Grave Digger. Now, in Avatar The Last Airbender, the use of this technique is just a little bit different. General Fong used this technique in order to trick Aang into entering the Avatar state. Now, I know this is an incredibly powerful technique, but there's a decent amount of room for counterplay. Obviously, other Earthbenders are a pretty good counter. People that are fast are a good counter, like good luck landing this on Ty Lee or Aang. I'd say this one is a solid B tier. Let's take a moment and let's move away from combat abilities and into an ability that's disturbing in its own unique way. I'm sure all of you guys remember this one. All the way back in Season 1 of Avatar The Last Airbender, there was a throwaway line suggesting that Kyoshi was born over 400 years ago, and for a lot of years fans assumed this was just a continuity error. But not only did the Kyoshi novels confirm that she lived this long ago, but they also confirmed that she didn't just live a long life. Through an advanced meditation technique taught to her by her spiritual mentor Lao Ge, Kyoshi learns how to stabilize her body at a cellular level, and this is through an earthbending technique. From that point forward, Kyoshi physically stopped aging. She lived for well over 2 centuries, outlasting nations, dynasties, entire generations of humans. Lao Ge himself was said to have lived for over 4,000 years using the same exact technique. But it's worth noting that immortality in the Avatar universe is not portrayed as a blessing. Over time, Kyoshi became colder, more detached, more willing to sacrifice individuals for the greater good. Even the air nomads would eventually completely withdraw their support from her. Kyoshi lived long enough to see ripple effects of her own decisions come back to haunt the world. Entire future conflicts could be traced back directly to choices that she had made centuries earlier, and that is the hidden cost of immortality. This technique is super tricky to rank. It doesn't win you battles on its own, but the wisdom that you would gain living this long and the techniques you could learn, honestly, the possibilities are literally limitless. I think immortality is an easy S tier. Combustion bending is the most unnatural and darkest bending technique ever introduced in the world of Avatar. This technique is completely unique in one terrifying way. It cannot be learned through normal training. Unlike every other bending discipline, combustion benders are not taught, they are made. The first known creation of combustion benders happened under a secret, horrifying initiative known as a Unanimity Project, which operated under a hidden island training facility. The full details of the training process are never completely explained, but here's what we know about it. Trainees were repeatedly fully submerged underwater and brought to the point of drowning, over and over again. The theory was that this repeated proximity to death could force the body to trigger a new, violent form of firebending as a survival response, generating explosive pressure outwards in an attempt to clear the water. Early on, the process was voluntary, with participants choosing to submerge themselves in an attempt to awaken a latent ability. However, later on, it would become far more brutal. Trainees were restrained with chains and forced to produce results or die trying. Only a few benders were able to survive this process, and every other subject died in training. Even more disturbing is that the Unanimity Project also attempted to create earthbender versions of combustion benders, but every single earthbender subject had died during the process. In combat, combustion bending is amongst the most destructive techniques we've ever seen. It functions like telekinetic firebending. The user doesn't throw flames, although they can use regular firebending. We never saw Combustion Man do it, but we did see Plea do it. Typically, combustion benders project a focused explosion directly from their forehead, and it seems to be able to detonate at almost any range. These blasts can obliterate rock formations, tear through metal, or even dispel incoming bending attacks mid-air. I'm going to be putting combustion bending at A tier, but the very tip top of A tier, almost S tier. We've talked about white fire, we've talked about blue fire, and now it's time to talk about regular fire. Just joking, this one is actually a level above blue fire, which is Iridescent Fire. Iridescent Fire has only been shown a few times ever, However, the first time we see it was in season 3 of Avatar when Aang and Zuko meet Ran and Shaw. The second time we see it is actually in Smoke and Shadow when Zuko does it, albeit to a much lesser degree, but he still does it. And the third time we see it, which is by far the most powerful a human has ever done it, is in The Reckoning of Roku. In a spirit-enhanced cave, Roku was not only able to bend blue fire, but also push far past it and create iridescent flames that crackled with lightning. The fire was so powerful and wild that it physically hurt his hands to bend and completely obliterated the cave. Iridescent flames is going in A tier. Lava bending is an extremely rare subset of earthbending, and in modern times was only done by a couple of non-avatars. However, in The Reckoning of Roku, Sozin actually downplays his skill and suggests that lava bending was something that any skilled earthbender could achieve. The first confirmed lava bender we see in the Avatar timeline is actually Avatar Sito, who used lava bending to simultaneously erupt 4 different volcanoes in one of the most overwhelming displays of power in the entire series. We also see Avatar Kyoshi use lava bending when creating Kyoshi Island. Avatar Roku also used it to destroy the fire temple on Crescent Island. I don't think a lot of people get how OP lava bending is because this is a kid's show. It literally turns Earth into flowing molten lava. It completely reshapes the battlefield and is nearly impossible to counter. For that reason, I am putting lava bending in S tier. I do want to take a bit of time and talk about sand bending, which, while it's not directly stated to be forbidden, it is definitely a rare technique and also much rarer than most people know. Sand bending is a rare technique held closely by the tribes of the Siwang Desert. The main reason sand bending has managed to stay so rare is because of the harsh environment that these tribes live in. Due to the desert's inaccessibility, the Earth Kingdom's government was never able to fully subdue the sandbender tribes, which allowed them to keep both their culture and their bending techniques largely isolated from the outside world. We've seen sandbenders on a few different occasions, most notably in Avatar: The Last Airbender, but also, interestingly enough, we see them in The Reckoning of Roku, where Prince Sozin is forced to use their services in order to locate Wan Shi Tong's library. We have never seen the upper limit of what sandbending is capable of, or how far the technique can truly be pushed. But since the next Avatar series is set in a post-apocalyptic world filled with massive sandstorms that benders are actively fighting against, I'm willing to bet we're finally going to be getting that sandbending lore. But for now, since we haven't seen the upper limits of it, I'm going to be putting sandbending in C tier. It's rare, it's useful, but it seems to be very situational. Spirit bending is a rare variation of water bending that allows the user to directly instill balance or imbalance within spirits themselves. This technique was invented by Unalaq and was later learned by Avatar Korra. To perform this technique, a waterbender encircles a spirit with a thin stream of water, which begins to glow as the energy within the spirit is manipulated. When used to convert negative energy into positive energy, both the water and the spirit glow with a golden light, after which the spirit either dissipates peacefully or becomes fully pacified. When the technique is reversed, forcing positive energy into negative energy, the water and spirit instead emit a purple glow. What makes spirit bending especially dangerous is that this technique is not limited to just spirits alone. When used against humans, it has the potential to destroy a person's soul entirely, making it one of the only techniques in the Avatar universe that can erase someone on a spiritual level rather than a physical one. Because of its enormous power, extreme rarity, and devastating consequences when misused, I am going to be putting spirit bending in A tier. Flight, also known as weightlessness, is one of the most complex and rare airbending abilities ever recorded, and it has only been demonstrated by 2 airbenders in history, Guru Lahima and Zahir. The ability is referred to as the highest level of airbending, and for most of history it was believed to exist only in legends. Unlike normal airbending techniques that rely on motion and pushback force, true flight allows airbenders to hover and move freely throughout the sky with no visible propulsions at all. Flight is not achieved through physical training alone. It requires a complete denounce of all earthly attachments and desires, resulting in total emotional and spiritual freedom. For Zahir, this moment only arrived after he witnessed the death of Pli, which caused him to finally let go of the last emotional anchor holding him to the ground. Once that attachment was gone, the limitation disappeared and he was able to fly. Because of how rare it is and how extreme the conditions are to unlock it, and the overwhelming advantage it gives in combat and mobility, flight earns a confident, and I mean confident, S tier. Glue bending. Yes, I'm not joking. We are going to be talking about glue bending. A real form of bending, although it was never shown, it was actually mentioned before. Before Aang's final battle with Fire Lord Ozai, he briefly considers the possibility of defeating Ozai using glue bending, essentially immobilizing him instead of overpowering him outright. Now, glue bending would be a form of water bending. Waterbenders can already manipulate liquids at every single thickness level that we can think of. We've seen them bend mist, steam, mud, sludge, basically everything. Glue is just a hyper viscous liquid, meaning a skilled enough waterbender could probably do it. However, there is one major downfall with glue bending that I'm surprised Aang didn't think of himself. Glue needs something to bind to. Ozai is not a cardboard box. Glue has to seep into tiny surface imperfections and then harden. Aang could theoretically immobilize Fire Lord Ozai with it, sure, but only if the conditions were absolutely perfect. So yeah, glue bending, it's gotta go in F tier. Energy bending is the ability to directly bend another person's life energy, and it is older than every single bending art in the series. It predates the four nations themselves and even the existence of the Avatar. Before the world was divided and before humans could bend at all, the lion turtles practiced energy bending freely. They used it to manipulate the energy within humans and themselves in order to grant people the ability to bend one of the four elements. And what makes this even crazier is that the lion turtles and energy bending might even predate Rava and Vatu themselves, because Rava herself refers to the lion turtle as Ancient One, implying that they're even older than she is. Before Aang's final battle with Ozai, a lion turtle passed the technique directly to him, and Aang used this ability to permanently remove Fire Lord Ozai's firebending abilities. The exact way energy bending works, we don't really know other than the fact that it says that you bend the will inside someone, you know, the whole little speech. We don't know the technical aspect of it, and for anyone who's about to comment, well actually energy bending works like, no guys, stop. Even Aang himself in the novelization of the season finale, Aang himself couldn't even explain how it works. We are going to be putting energy bending in S+ tier. Metal bending is a rare subset of earth bending. Okay, well, used to be rare subset of earth bending discovered by Toph. It works exactly like normal earth bending, but targets a small amount of dirt and metal, allowing for control over refined metal objects, cables, and even liquid metals like mercury. In The Legend of Korra, it would become much more common as there would be entire cities full of metal benders and a dedicated police task force in Republic City full of metal benders too. Metal bending in Avatar was an easy S tier. It seemed like a free win anytime there was any sort of metal around, but in The Legend of Korra, its impact was a lot less, and people were more used to seeing it, but I don't know, I'd say it's still a solid B tier. Lightning Redirection is a specialized sub-skill of firebending that allows users to absorb lightning into their body and safely channel it in a different direction. The technique is said to have been developed and created by Iroh after he studied the way master waterbenders would redirect an opponent's energy rather than opposing it head-on. However, this origin would later be contradicted in The Reckoning of Roku, when Prince Sozin learns about lightning redirection from hidden ancient firebending records in Wan Shi Tong's library. Meaning either Iroh thought he created it, or it's another one of those situations where he told everyone he killed the dragons, but he was just protecting them. You know, something like that. Because lightning direction is a purely defensive technique and requires precise timing and body control, it doesn't reach the destructive heights of raw lightning generation. Still, the ability to completely neutralize one of the deadliest attacks in Avatar is invaluable. For that reason, I'm going to be putting lightning redirection in B tier, but like a solid B tier. Anyway, that is it. That is the longest video I have ever made. If you made it this far, comment down below Avatar Kyoshi, because hopefully my next video is about Avatar Kyoshi. Anyway, subscribe, like, bye.